Hello, my friends. Stay with me to the end and remember to hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe. I wasn't supposed to be out in those mountains at night, but I didn't know that when I accepted the hiking trip from my friend, Mason. He had grown up in the area, knew the trails, and insisted there was nothing to worry about. "It's just a hike," he said, "the kind you see in magazines." I should have listened to my instincts, but I wanted to believe him. We set off late afternoon, parking his old pickup at the trailhead just past a faded sign that read Crescent Ridge. The trail was narrow, winding through thick woods and occasional open clearings. The sun was dipping behind the mountains when we reached the first overlook, and I felt the familiar thrill of being high above the world. The light softened everything. The air smelled of pine and wet earth, and for a moment, I forgot the stress I had carried for months. Mason suggested we push on to the next clearing. "It'll be easier to make camp there," he said. I didn't protest. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was pride, but I agreed. We followed a smaller trail that I hadn't seen on the map. It was steeper, rockier, and shadows stretched unnaturally long between the trees. I didn't notice at first, but the forest seemed heavier, silent, not just quiet, oppressively silent. No birds, no wind, only the sound of our boots on the loose dirt. I told myself it was late, the animals were resting. Then Mason stopped. I almost ran into him. He was staring into the woods, his jaw tight. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. I strained my ears. At first, nothing. Then I thought I heard it. A low, rhythmic tapping, faint but deliberate. I turned my head, scanning the shadows, and saw nothing. "Probably just a branch," I said, trying to steady my voice. Mason didn't respond. He only shook his head and started moving again, faster now. I followed, unease settling in my stomach. We reached a small clearing where the remains of an old cabin sat, roof partially caved, walls leaning. Mason suggested we set up camp nearby. I wanted to argue, but something in the air made me comply. It wasn't normal fear. It was instinct, a primal understanding that something here didn't like visitors. While Mason gathered firewood, I circled the cabin. The door hung open, rotting hinges barely holding it in place. Inside, dust covered the floorboards. The fireplace was blackened, but the ashes were old. Something about the place made my skin crawl, though I couldn't say why. Then I noticed scratches on the inside of the doorframe, small at first but growing larger toward the floor. Deep, uneven grooves that looked like claws, but too straight, deliberate, like they had been carved by something that understood what it was doing. I called Mason over. "Look at this," I said. He crouched, inspecting the marks. His face went pale. "Never seen that before," he said quietly. "You sure this is safe?" I wasn't, but we set up camp anyway. Night fell fast. The fire we managed to get going barely pushed back the darkness. Shadows danced across the trees, long and jagged. That tapping returned, soft at first, then louder, more deliberate. Mason kept glancing toward the tree line, unease etched on his face. "Probably raccoons or something," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Hours passed. I tried to sleep, huddled in my sleeping bag, but the tapping continued. And then came something worse. Whispers. Almost too soft to hear, words I couldn't understand, floating through the fog that had begun creeping into the clearing. I froze. Mason was asleep, or at least pretending to be. My instincts screamed at me to run, but something rooted me to the spot. The whispers grew clearer, shaping themselves into voices I recognized. Neighbors, old teachers, even family members. They called my name, urged me to come closer, to step into the darkness beyond the clearing. I didn't move. I couldn't. Then, the fire flared violently, as if someone had struck a match beneath the logs. Shadows stretched taller than the trees, and in the corners of my vision, I saw them. Figures tall, impossibly thin, bent at odd angles, emerging from the tree line. Not moving like humans, moving like something alive yet not alive, gliding across the earth without touching it. I stumbled backward, trying to shake my head, but the firelight reflected in their eyes. Hollow. Endless. Eyes that seemed to pierce directly into my thoughts. Mason stirred. "What is it?" he whispered, eyes wide. "They're watching," I managed. "Whatever's out there, it knows we're here." We stayed silent for hours, huddled by the fire. The fog thickened, curling into the clearing like fingers. Each time I dared to look up, I saw a figure at the edge of the tree line, tilting its head unnaturally, studying us. At one point, I dared to glance directly. The figure grinned, not a normal smile, too wide, too sharp. And for the first time, I understood. The tales Mason had grown up with weren't exaggerations. They mimicked, they studied, they learned. I tried to wake Mason in the morning. He was gone. Just gone. No footprints in the mud, no sign of struggle. Only the fire, now dim in the cabin, staring at me like it had swallowed him whole. I ran, not toward the trail we'd taken, but deeper into the mountains, hoping to escape whatever had taken him. The forest twisted unnaturally, paths I thought I knew bending and looping back on themselves. Every step forward brought me back to the cabin, to the clearing, to the figures waiting silently at the edges of the fog. By the third night, I was exhausted, starving, my clothes ripped and caked with mud. I stumbled into another clearing, hoping to find a road, a river, anything. Instead, I found a small cemetery. Old, forgotten, the stones leaning in impossible angles. Names worn away, except for one. The last name etched clearly into stone. Mason. I fell to my knees. My breath came in ragged gasps. I screamed his name, but the mountains swallowed it. Then I heard the whispering again, not calling my name this time, calling me to the graves, urging me closer. I fought it. I ran. The next day, I somehow found a road, a real one this time, gravel and asphalt, clearly used. I flagged down a trucker and begged for help. My story sounded insane even as I told it. The driver, a grizzled man from the area, listened quietly. He didn't laugh. He only shook his head. "Blackwood Hollow," he said. "You don't leave if you go in there. People vanish. Woods swallow them. You're lucky. Most aren't." I asked him how long it had been since someone came out. He didn't answer. He just drove faster, eyes scanning the tree line. "You don't go back. Ever." I returned to my apartment that night, trying to convince myself it was over. But the fog followed me. On nights when the wind is still and the streetlights flicker, I see shapes at the edges of my vision. Shadows tall, thin, bending in ways no human body should. And I hear whispers. Not voices I know now, not my friends or family, but voices calling to me, learning me, shaping themselves to my fears. I've tried to avoid the forests, to stay in the safety of cities, but I feel it tracking me, waiting, patient. Like Blackwood Hollow never released me, and I know one day, if I make the wrong turn, I'll end up back there, alone. Or worse, replaced by something waiting in the fog, watching, mimicking, claiming the living. I shouldn't have gone. I shouldn't have followed the trail. And I should never have believed I could leave unmarked, because in deep Appalachia, some places don't just exist, they consume, they remember, and they don't forgive. Even now, I swear I see figures moving just beyond the window at night, watching, waiting. And I know it's only a matter of time before the fog calls my name again. I never should have taken the shortcut. Everyone in my hometown warned me about the old coal roads deep in Appalachia, the ones that twisted through forgotten hollers and abandoned camps. But I was in a hurry, and my GPS insisted it was a legitimate route. It wasn't. Not in the way I thought. I was driving a rusted pickup, the kind that groaned over every rock and rut, following a narrow road that had clearly not been maintained in decades. The trees on either side were so thick they blocked out the sun, and as the miles ticked by, the forest grew quieter. No birds, no wind, not even the hum of distant insects. It was unnatural. I should have turned back. I didn't. The road ended abruptly at a small clearing. And there it was, a house, not abandoned exactly. The windows glinted in the dim light, the roof looked solid, and smoke curled lazily from the chimney. There was a mailbox out front with peeling red paint that read, simply, Harper. Curiosity got the better of me. I parked and stepped out, stretching after hours of driving. The air was thick and smelled faintly metallic, like iron or blood. My boots sank slightly in the soft soil. As I approached the porch, I saw movement inside, a shadow flitting past the curtains. "Hello?" I called, my voice sounding absurdly loud in the stillness. No answer. I stepped closer, noticing footprints in the mud. Too many. Large, elongated impressions leading toward the forest behind the house. They were fresh. Then I saw it, at the edge of the tree line. Tall, impossibly thin, hunched in a way that made its silhouette grotesque. It didn't run or walk. It glided, limbs bending at impossible angles. Its head turned slowly, deliberately, and I felt it look straight at me. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. I turned toward the house, thinking maybe I could knock, get some explanation. But when I looked again, the figure was gone. I told myself it was a trick of the light, maybe a deer with a deformed coat. I stepped onto the porch. The door creaked as I nudged it. It opened, surprisingly easy. The interior was dark, but not empty. The smell hit me first, damp, moldy, but with something sweeter underneath, like decayed fruit. I explored carefully. The furniture was old, dust-covered, but arranged as if someone lived there recently. A rocking chair slowly swayed, though the air was still. On the table lay a journal, leather-bound and thick with age. I opened it. The writing was frantic, jagged. They come from the woods. They know you before you know yourself. The fog shows faces you trust. They mimic voices. They wait. Do not look too long. Do not follow, never follow. I froze. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but the curiosity was paralyzing. I looked toward the window, and the figure was back, only a few feet away now, just outside the glass. Its face was pale, thin, and impossible to read. Its eyes were hollow, dark, absorbing the light. It raised a hand and pointed at me. Not a normal gesture, but deliberate, almost ceremonial. I backed away. The door slammed shut on its own, rattling the windows. The journal fell to the floor. I tried to grab it, but my hands shook. Then I heard something behind me, soft footsteps on the wooden floor. I spun. Nothing. The rocking chair had stopped moving. Silence settled, heavy and suffocating. I ran for the door. It didn't budge. Panicked, I kicked, shoved, slammed my shoulder into it. Finally, it opened. The figure was gone. I bolted to my truck, fumbling for the keys. My fingers slipped, fumbling the ignition. The truck coughed to life, tires spinning in mud. I tore down the road, heart hammering. The forest seemed alive now, trees bending unnaturally to block the way, shadows stretching across the path, thickening the fog. Shapes darted at the edges of my vision, tall, thin, bending at angles no human body should. Each time I blinked, they were closer, closer than they should have been. Hours, or maybe minutes, time lost all meaning. I drove until the road finally emerged into a familiar highway. The fog lifted immediately, and I saw the sun rising over the ridges. I thought I was safe. I wasn't. That night, I woke to the sound of footsteps in my living room. I live alone. My apartment is on the second floor. The streetlights outside flickered, casting long shadows that didn't belong. I saw them in the corner of my eye, tall, thin, bending impossibly. I didn't move. I couldn't. I watched as one figure stepped closer, tilting its head, reaching toward me. It wasn't moving like a human, not like any animal I had ever seen. And yet, somehow, it knew exactly where I was, exactly how to move through space I thought was mine. I blinked, and it was gone. Days later, I tried to rationalize it. Stress, lack of sleep, hallucinations brought on by anxiety. But the journal haunted me. I couldn't stop thinking about it, about the instructions, the warnings. And then I found another journal in the drawer of my apartment desk. I hadn't owned it before. Its pages were filled with the same jagged handwriting. They follow those who see them. They remember faces. They learn your fears. Do not fall asleep. Do not look back. They are patient. I can't leave my apartment at night anymore. I don't drive through the mountains. I stay inside, the blinds drawn, lights on. Sometimes I hear the soft hum of fog curling under the door, a faint whisper calling my name. It mimics me now, my voice urging me to step outside. I know if I answer, if I move, I won't come back. I've tried to tell people, friends, family. Nobody believes me. They think I'm exaggerating, paranoid, crazy. Maybe I am, but I know the truth. I saw it. I ran, and I can feel it still, somewhere, just beyond the veil of reality, watching, waiting, patient. If you ever find yourself driving into the deep woods of Appalachia, remember this: the fog isn't just fog. The shadows aren't just shadows. The voices aren't just your imagination. Some places don't forgive curiosity. Some things in those mountains are older than memory, hungrier than any human, and infinitely patient. And if you hear someone calling your name from the mist, don't follow. Don't look back. Don't move. Because once they learn your face, they will never forget, and you will never leave. I should have turned back the moment I saw the first sign. Not a road sign, not a warning, but a single tree in the middle of the dirt trail, split down the middle like it had been cut by an axe, but jagged, uneven, almost as if it had been torn by something massive. The air smelled different there, thick and heavy, and I could feel it pressing against my chest. I was on my way to photograph an abandoned coal camp in the far reaches of the Appalachian Mountains. The GPS took me on a series of twisting dirt roads that gradually disappeared into the forest, until I was navigating blind, relying on landmarks Mason, my friend and guide, had scribbled on a napkin. He'd warned me the area was remote, but he hadn't mentioned the way the woods seemed to fold in around you, or the way the shadows lingered even in the daylight. By late afternoon, we found the camp. Wooden shacks rotted in half-collapsed rows. Rusted mining equipment leaned against walls like silent sentinels. A thin creek ran through the center, sluggish and black. Everything was dead quiet. I set my camera down on the hood of Mason's truck and took a deep breath. "You feeling that?" he said, eyes scanning the tree line. "Like, we're not supposed to be here?" I shrugged it off. "Probably just the isolation. It's creepy, yeah, but it's fine." But as we walked, I noticed the footprints, not ours, not animal. Long, thin, dragged slightly. They appeared around the creek, vanished, then reappeared near the cabins. I pointed them out, and Mason went pale. "Never seen prints like that out here," he said. "And I've been hiking these hills since I was a kid." The sun was dipping low when we decided to camp near the creek. Mason built the fire. I set up my tent. Shadows stretched long and twisted. The forest seemed to lean in, listening. That night, I woke to a whisper. My name. Soft. Somewhere beyond the firelight, in the fog rolling down the hills. I thought it was Mason calling me. "Did you hear that?" I asked. He shook his head. "Hear what?" The whisper came again, closer this time. I turned, scanning the fog. Something moved there, thin, tall, limbs bending in ways that made no sense, its head tilted unnaturally. "Don't look directly at it," Mason muttered. His voice trembled. I froze. The shape didn't advance. It only watched. The whispers continued, calling my name, then mimicking my voice, saying things I had thought only I knew. Fear clenched me tight. I grabbed my flashlight and tried to snap a picture. The figure recoiled slightly when the light hit it, only to vanish into the fog the moment I blinked. My camera showed nothing, only the faint outline of the forest. Hours passed. Every time I thought I could rest, I caught movement at the edge of the firelight. Figures, sometimes one, sometimes many, always just beyond reach, always observing. They didn't move like humans, not like animals. They slipped across the ground, bending, folding, stretching, warping the space between trees. Mason and I tried to keep quiet, huddled near the fire. He whispered stories I'd never heard, of logging crews disappearing in these hills, of miners vanishing after venturing into unknown hollers. He spoke of fogs that came alive, of whispers that learned your voice. Around midnight, I saw the first face, or at least I thought it was a face, pale, elongated, staring at me from the fog. It grinned. Not a smile I could interpret, a smile that should not exist. I bolted. Toward where? I had no idea. The forest was unfamiliar now. Trees twisted, paths looped back impossibly. Every time I thought I found the trail, I was back near the creek, near the prints that had first alerted us. The figures followed, always, just at the edge of vision, bending, reaching, observing. Whispers filled the air, sometimes my voice, sometimes Mason's. Names, secrets, thoughts. By the third night, Mason was gone. I woke to an empty tent, footprints leading into the fog, but none coming back. Panic gripped me. I followed the prints. Some disappeared mid-step. Others bent unnaturally toward the creek, defying the slope of the land. I tried to retrace our route, hoping for the roads we had driven in. The forest resisted. I stumbled over roots, climbed over fallen trees, only to find the camp again, as if I had walked in a circle for days. The fog thickened, curling around me like fingers. One evening, I couldn't keep track of time. I stumbled into a clearing I had never seen. At its center stood a cabin, intact, though no one had lived there in decades, Mason insisted. Inside, I saw scraps of journals, rotting and yellowed. I flipped through them. The handwriting was frantic. They come with the fog. They see you before you see them. They learn your face. Do not look. Do not speak. Do not step into the mist. Once seen, they follow. Once heard, they remember. Once touched, you belong. I shivered and backed away. Outside, shapes moved in the fog, gliding closer. I ran again, heart hammering. Branches tore my clothes, roots tripped me. And yet, no matter how far I ran, I returned to the same clearing, the same cabin, the same creeping fog. Days or nights, I lost track. My phone had died hours ago, and my watch seemed to spin in circles. Hunger gnawed at me, fear gnawed harder, and the whispers never stopped, always learning, always mimicking, always drawing me closer. At some point, I saw a figure emerge fully from the fog, a human shape, thin and stretched, limbs bending impossibly. Its face was my own. My voice called my name, beckoning me. I stumbled backward, crying, screaming, but the voice continued, patient, insistent. I ran blindly, crashing through underbrush until I broke through the tree line onto a narrow mountain road I didn't recognize. The fog was gone. The forest behind me looked normal. My pickup was nowhere in sight. I never returned to the forest. I couldn't. But sometimes, in the quiet of my apartment, I see shadows moving at the edge of vision. Sometimes, I hear my name whispered from nowhere, perfectly mimicking my own voice, urging me to step outside. I've learned the rules Mason whispered in fear. Never follow, never look too long, never answer. The moment you do, they know you. The moment they know you, they remember. And I know that one day, if I take the wrong turn, if I let curiosity slip for even a second, I'll vanish into the mountains of Appalachia. No trail, no trace, just fog. And whatever waits in the deep hollers will claim me, as it has claimed so many before. I've tried to warn people. Nobody believes me. Maybe it's for the best. Some things in deep Appalachia are not meant to be understood. Some things are older than memory, hungrier than the mind, patient beyond reason. And they are still waiting. I didn't know the road I took existed until the night I drove down it. It wasn't on any GPS, not even the old paper maps Mason kept in his truck. He had warned me, of course. "Don't go down that trail," he had said, "not after dark." But I shrugged it off. I was 28, stubborn, and convinced that nothing in the mountains could scare me. The road started innocently enough, a gravel path winding between thick pine and hemlock. By the time the sun dipped behind the ridges, the trees had swallowed all light. The road narrowed until my truck could barely pass. Branches scraped against the sides, snapping occasionally, though no wind stirred. Somewhere up ahead, a creek murmured, but it sounded wrong, hollow, as if something beneath it was moving. I should have turned back. Mason had stopped giving directions when the road became uncertain. He muttered something about taking a shortcut through the holler, but I wasn't listening. My mind was on the camera strapped to my shoulder, the old cabins I'd hoped to photograph, the thrill of being somewhere few people had seen in decades. Then I saw the first sign that something was wrong. A figure standing in the middle of the road. Not a person, not entirely. Tall, thin, shoulders hunched unnaturally, limbs bending in ways that no human body should bend. Its head tilted to the side, long hair hanging like black strings, and it didn't move when I stopped the truck. It only watched. I blinked. It was gone. I cursed and pressed the accelerator, trying to shake the unease that had settled in my chest. That's when I saw the cabin. Half hidden by the trees, a structure that shouldn't have existed. It looked lived in. Smoke from the chimney, a rocking chair on the porch swaying gently in still air, and a light flickering in one window. I parked 100 feet away, stepped out, and felt the air change. The smell hit first, wet pine mixed with decay, something coppery underneath. I approached cautiously. Footprints in the mud led to the porch, long, thin, dragging slightly. Not human, I realized. I knocked on the door. No answer. The air grew heavier and I felt it pressing against my chest. A hum started low in my ears. I stepped back, then the door opened. Not by hand, not by wind, just swung wide, revealing a dark interior. I stepped inside. Dust covered the floorboards, but the fireplace held the faint smell of smoke, as if a fire had burned recently. On the table lay a journal, leather-bound and thick with age. I flipped it open. The writing was frantic. They watch. They learn your voice. They remember your face. Do not linger. Do not look too long. Never follow. I froze. That's when I felt it. The air shifted, the shadows in the corners of the room bending as if alive. I turned slowly, and there it was. The figure from the road, now in the corner of the cabin. It didn't walk. It glided. Its head tilted impossibly, eyes hollow, staring. I couldn't look away. I grabbed my camera and snapped a photo. The figure recoiled slightly, but when I looked again, it was gone. Just vanished. Panic took over. I ran outside. The fog had rolled in thick, curling around the trees, around my legs, making the ground slick and unfamiliar. The footprints I had noticed earlier now surrounded me, appearing and disappearing with no pattern. I ran blindly down the path, crashing through underbrush. I heard whispering. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then I realized it was voices, names I recognized, friends, family, calling me to step off the trail into the fog. The tone was gentle, coaxing, but I felt my heart hammering in warning. Hours, or maybe minutes, I can't be sure. The forest twisted, looping back on itself. Every path I tried ended at the cabin, the same rocking chair swaying, the same shadows bending at impossible angles. By the third night, I realized Mason was gone. I woke alone, tent shredded, footprints leading into the fog. I followed them, hoping to find a road, a creek, something familiar. I found a clearing instead, and at its center, a gravestone. Weathered, leaning, impossible. A name etched clearly. Mason. I screamed. My own voice echoed back, warped, coming from the fog itself. Shapes emerged, bending, gliding closer, tilting their heads like they were studying me. I ran again, blindly, falling into roots and mud until the first faint hint of sunlight touched the trees. When I finally emerged onto a road I recognized, the world felt normal again. But I knew it wasn't. The fog, the shadows, the figures, they had marked me. I could feel their gaze, patient and unblinking. Even now, nights are the worst. I see tall, thin shapes at the edges of my vision. I hear whispers, my voice calling me from the corners of the house. I've tried to tell people. Nobody believes me. They say it's stress, exhaustion, paranoia. Maybe it is. But I know what I saw. I know what followed me home. I know one day, if I ever take a wrong turn, I'll vanish into those hollers, into that fog, into the watching shadows, and then, like Mason, I will belong to them. Somewhere in deep Appalachia, they wait, patient, hungry, remembering, and I know they will never forget my face. I was never one for superstition. I grew up in the hills of West Virginia, surrounded by forests and abandoned mines, but I never paid attention to the old tales. Ghosts, spirits, creatures that waited in the hollers, they were stories to scare kids. That all changed the day I took the wrong turn. I was driving a borrowed truck on my way to photograph an abandoned logging site deep in the Appalachian mountains. Mason, my friend and guide, had given me vague directions and a map scribbled on the back of a receipt. I followed the roads he pointed out, twisting through hills and valleys until the pavement ended and a narrow dirt path disappeared into the trees. "Take it," Mason had said. "You'll see the old cabins. Nobody goes that far." The path was rough. My truck bounced over hidden roots and rocks. The deeper I went, the quieter it became. Not the natural quiet of the forest, the oppressive, unnatural quiet. No birds, no insects, not even wind in the trees. Just silence. After what felt like hours, I reached a clearing. A small cabin sat at the center, its roof partially collapsed, paint flaking. Smoke rose from a crooked chimney. The sight should have been comforting, a sign of life. But something in the air made me freeze. The smell was metallic, like iron, mixed with the earthy scent of decay. I stepped closer. Footprints in the mud surrounded the cabin, elongated, thin, uneven. I couldn't make sense of them. They weren't human, and they weren't animal. I called out. "Hello?" My voice echoed strangely, swallowed almost immediately by the forest. No answer. I noticed a shadow move across the porch. An old man sat in a rocking chair, motionless, staring at me. His eyes were hollow, his skin stretched tight over his face. He didn't speak, just watched. My instincts screamed at me to leave. "You shouldn't be here," he said finally, his voice a dry rasp. "Not after dark, not alone." I'm just passing through," I said. My voice sounded small, pathetic. "I'm here to take pictures of the cabins." He shook his head slowly. "Cabins don't want their stories told." I didn't understand, but I ignored the warning. I moved toward the cabin. The door creaked as I pushed it open. Dust coated the floorboards. Old furniture leaned against the walls, but it was the fireplace that caught my attention. Ashes blackened, recent. Someone had been here, very recently. That's when I heard it. A whisper, so soft I thought I imagined it. Then another, closer this time. My name, my own voice, calling me from the shadows. I spun around, heart racing. Nothing. The old man didn't move, didn't react. He simply said, "They're learning." Before I could ask who, something shifted in the corner of the cabin. A figure, tall and impossibly thin, emerged from the shadows, its limbs bent at wrong angles, its head tilted, staring, unblinking. Its skin was pale, grayish, absorbing the light. I froze. My mind screamed at me to run, but my feet were nailed to the floor. The figure moved closer, slow and deliberate, silent as a shadow. I tried to take a photo, but the screen on my camera went blank. Every time I blinked, it vanished, only to appear closer when I looked again. I bolted out the door, nearly tripping on the threshold. The fog had rolled in thick, curling around the cabin like living fingers. The forest had shifted. The trail I had driven in on was gone. Every tree looked twisted, familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. Shapes moved just beyond my vision, bending, twisting, disappearing into the mist. I ran blindly. The fog followed me, whispering. Not my name this time, but voices I recognized. Mason, my parents, old friends, coaxing me to step off the path, to enter the mist, to leave everything behind. By the third night, exhaustion and fear had taken over. I'd fallen into streams, crawled over roots, and lost all sense of direction. That's when I found the second cabin, smaller, older, rotting even more. Its door opened onto darkness. Inside, I found a stack of journals. I flipped one open. The handwriting was frantic, jagged. They come with the fog. They remember your face. They learn your voice. Do not linger. Do not answer. Do not follow. Once seen, you belong. I looked up. The tall figure was in the corner again, bending, stretching, tilting its head. I screamed and ran. Branches tore at my clothes. Mud soaked my boots. But I couldn't stop. Every step forward brought me back to the first cabin. The fire in the chimney, the old man's empty rocking chair, the footprints surrounding it. Time had no meaning. Days, nights, they all blended. Hunger gnawed at me. Thirst burned my throat. The whispers never stopped, always calling, always coaxing, always learning. At some point, Mason was gone. I woke in the tent to find it empty, shredded. Footprints led into the fog, none returning. I followed, hoping to find him, only to find a small clearing with a single gravestone. Leaning, weathered, etched clearly with his name, Mason. I ran again, screaming, calling his name. The forest twisted around me, paths looping back impossibly. The figures followed, gliding silently through the fog, bending at impossible angles, watching, learning, mimicking. My own voice echoed back at me, warped, coaxing me to step closer. Finally, I stumbled onto a narrow road, real this time. The fog lifted immediately. The trees returned to normal. The morning sun touched the ridges. My truck was gone. My route home had disappeared. I never returned to the forest. I can't, but I can feel their gaze, patient and unblinking. Shadows move differently in the corner of my vision. Whispers come through the cracks of doors and windows, perfectly mimicking voices I know. My name, my thoughts, my fears. I've learned the rules too late. Do not answer, do not follow, do not linger. Because one day, if I take the wrong turn, if curiosity wins for even a second, I will vanish into those hollers, into the fog, into the watching shadows, and they will remember my face, just as they remembered Mason's. Somewhere in deep Appalachia they wait, patient, hungry, eternal. And when the next fool wanders into the hollers, they will be ready. Your support keeps the horror alive, like comment and subscribe before you go.